My name is Adam Carr. I'm the Deputy Editor for Community Engagement at Milwaukee Neighborhood News Service.
And I'm Rob Smith. I am the Director for the Center for Urban Research, Teaching, and Outreach. I'm an Associate Professor of History at Marquette University.
Among other things, NNS does objective reporting in North and South Side neighborhoods in Milwaukee. In the other parts of my life, I do writing, film, photography. I've done some public artwork. I lead tours of the city, and really, I'm kind of a student, a humble student of the city of Milwaukee and all that I do, and I love telling a story as well. And that's what brought me together with Rob.
You know, my general interest and commitment to what would be considered engaged scholarship is to really use Curto as an opportunity to engage community and campus expertise in all the ways that we can relative to research projects, programming and outreach, and also any ways that teaching and education can be a part of what we do. And we center our efforts directly through Marquette's mission for the search for truth and looking to operationalize Jesuit values and commitment to serving our local community.
I didn't like history when I was in school. It was like my least favorite subject, is that I think a lot of times history, it can feel far away, it can feel abstracted, it can feel distant.
I was trying to figure out what my interest would be. I knew I wanted to be an academic, whatever that meant. I didn't really know what that meant, but I knew that academic pursuits were most engaging and interesting for me. And I took a class with a professor, Johnny Smith, and Johnny Smith made it very clear to me that one of the ways to understand race and racism was to look at the way it's been codified and mobilized through law. When he first began lecturing on the first day of class, I said, okay, that's it. That's it right there. It's really looking at the way law teaches us how to treat one another. My own research really sort of fosters that conversation. When I'm looking into legal developments, when I'm looking into landmark cases, I'm curious who the plaintiffs were who were knowledgeable enough to say, I'm going to sue a big corporation, or I'm going to sue my local government, or I'm going to sue the police department. How do they come to know that that is an option? How do they find the right voices to then expand on that legal claim and then connect that to a local movement? You know, because most of the landmark civil rights cases have always been connected to the local movements, or in order for the cases to be successful, they had to be. And so, you know, I'm always excited to learn not only from other adults who are not academics, because I know that their intellectualism is as powerful or more powerful, but then also the brilliance of young minds. You know, the worst thing we can do is stifle the creative mind of a young person. I will always talk to any young people about US history generally and African American history specifically, because I fundamentally believe that it's that historical landscape that helps to ground individuals in culture and identity. And if you see yourself in the saga of history, you can also understand your present and understand your future a little bit more. I firmly believe that. And I feel like it is my awesome responsibility and obligation to share that with as many young people as possible. If you don't know about Milwaukee and somebody says, let's go to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, I will admit, happy days, Laverne and Shirley, you know. And when you get here and you actually see the racial diversity, it's a very heartening thing to know that you have a city in the Midwest that represents this kind of diversity. Now, of course, what that means is you get all the culture wars that the Midwest is infamous for. So you do have a very segregated landscape. You do have a very hostile political climate, but the people in this city are some of the hardest working champions for justice and equality that I've known. And that brings me to a place of a little bit of comfort, knowing that I'm in struggle with like-minded folks.
Sure. Well, it makes me proud to be from Milwaukee. I grew up here. My family moved here in 1985, and my parents sent me to great public schools that I was really happy and proud to be a part of, and I'm very grateful to now as an adult. And I think what I learned, one of the things that I learned in that period of time, despite our clear understanding of Milwaukee's division, its dysfunction, its segregation, is that there's remarkable diverse communities here, and that was reflected in my classroom. So I think to me, I think the way that Milwaukee continues to thrive in pockets despite all of the generations of disinvestment, the way that people are resourceful, the way that folks are scrappy, the way that folks are cheap sometimes here, and figure out how to do a lot with a little. I mean, that to me is the Milwaukee ethos. Milwaukee can feel like this small place. But there's so much inside of it, and it's those glimpses into these incredible universes, these incredible vocabularies, this incredible work that happens all over the city that continues to kind of motivate me into my. Sure. I recently had some friends in town, or some folks in town from around the country, actually, small group, and we went to we had empanadas on Valete Street in the Martin Drive neighborhood. Then we hung out at Alice's Garden for a little bit, and then we had arepas in the Walker's Point neighborhood. And they're like, "Where are we? I thought we were supposed to be in Wisconsin." Like
Milwaukee is very familiar as a Midwestern city, but it's got its own thing. And I don't exactly know, even after living here for about 10 years, what that thing exactly is. And I think the best way to put it is kind of in the words you were using, Adam. It's a thing made up of a bunch of different things. Maybe that thing is because of the ways that folks who moved to Milwaukee, migrated here, have left their stamp on the city and continue to leave their mark on the city. Maybe.
I think, as Rob was saying before, the story of the open housing marches is where we started. And we saw the power of a story whose predominant authors were young Black people to ignite people's imaginations. Not just people, specifically young people. The story of the open housing marches almost always leaves out all of the young Black people who wrote the story. And so I think as we shared it in a slightly different way, we saw it motivating people and changing and seeing the city in different ways and engaging in different conversations. They really taught us how to start teaching a story, which was using primary documents, using images, using media to really be at the middle of the dialogue, and us to be engaging with the audience with them. And as Rob puts it, invite the audience into the act of being a historian, looking at photos, looking at text, and really analyzing them. And really, over time, I'll say this, Rob, this is not a humble thing to say. We've gotten really good at telling the story of the open housing marches. And the reason is because we're aggregating all these interesting remarks and observations that young people are making. It's really students who are like, they'll see something in the image and say, "What about that?" And I'll go, I've looked at this image 50 times and I haven't seen that. And I think so Rob and I get to tell the story of the open housing marches. We might sound like we're clever, or we might sound like but we're really, we learned a lot of the story from the elders, and then we learned a lot of this, how to teach the story and how to tell the story from young people. And that's like authentic. Like if you were to look at us the first time we did it to now, we're so much better at doing it. It's not just because we practiced it. It's because we're incorporating all this insight from young people. We're incorporating. So these students, that I'm just excited for the teachers to work with students, is all the insights the students will be able to offer. And they might ask questions that stump you. I hope they do. I hope they do that all the time. They'll be like,
To the young people at the Vel Phillips Center, who we always shout out because they taught us how to tell the story. They really kind of gave us an insight into it being necessary for young people to see themselves reflected in the story and to be the authors of that history as well. And
like, because we assume there aren't great stories in Milwaukee, because those have been left out of the narrative that we tell, the story we tell about Milwaukee, they're almost more powerful when they can, like Rob said, when they can wake a kid up and they hear about, wow, we have this civil rights story that was written in Milwaukee, or wow, we have these incredible like these foodways those we have incredible Hmong entrepreneurs who are doing great things, and it's folks from all these different places. Like, I think those can, because they've been left out largely from some of our broader civic conversations, they're that much more powerful when we include them.
Yeah, for me personally and professionally as a historian, when you're able to learn the city's history and you're able to kind of learn the mores of a city, then you can kind of pick up the heartbeat of a city. You can kind of see and understand better how and why people move and operate the way that they do. And so that's always been sort of an important approach to what I would consider my engagement here locally, is trying to get a sense of who the people are, where they come from, what they're up to, and kind of move and operate in that fashion. I find it very much a compliment when people have said to me, "Oh, I thought you were from Milwaukee." Like, no, I'm not, but that means something if you kind of see me as part of the community, you know. You know, I'll be very honest about this, and it's what I keep in my back pocket. I always will tell young people, particularly young folks from urban areas, that edge you have, like that's your wild card. You just have to figure out how to play it and when to play it at the right time. You know, if you feel like you are being mistreated in some way, but you can't quite put your finger on it, it's probably true. You know, you let your spidey senses tingle as they need to tingle. But your experiences emerging in a world in the urban environment has provided a certain insight into the shortcomings of democracy and capitalism. Their experiences growing up in these urban landscapes have made them tougher, but they have some built-in features and strengths that are not always highlighted, you know, because we measure youth development, you know, understandably around academic achievement and stuff like that. But
Milwaukee treats the people it needs the most the worst. Like the people that Milwaukee needs the most, the young people sitting in classrooms today, we need them to be our leaders, and we don't treat them well. So I think, to me, I would love to see community in Milwaukee not something to be overcome, but to be something that young people use as a position of power to write the future chapters of the city.
There's a wide body of academics who fundamentally believe, appreciate, and want to herald what we sometimes refer to as organic intellectuals. You know, these are folks who are brilliant because of the ways in which that they have operated in the world. The world has taught them lessons that maybe others have not learned. And there are always brilliant minds right around us. They're everywhere we turn, there's an organic intellectual.
Tricky. I would love to, just thinking about as we're talking about it being generative. So like so North Division, South Division, Bradley Tech, those schools can really, like, if they can help build out some of this material and that become part of the story of this, right? Like, because South Division's already part of the story. High School of the Arts is already part of the story. Carmen's already part of the story. But like, if the teachers there and the students there really started picking some of this up and driving it, I'd love to say, like, you know, these were like sophisticated, cool, interesting local ways of teaching local history that's pioneered like by the students and teachers in MPS schools. You know?
Adam, we were at that coffee shop near your place. What's that coffee shop? What's that?
J-Lo. I don't know if that'll ever exist again.
Oh man.
I don't like the person I am when I'm drinking coffee.